5 a.m. Smoking a cigarette, thinking about days made out of sweet memory. The distant sound of a Willie Jackson record being flipped. The good stuff. The kind of music that made making love feel like just a formality. Ruthless and reckless, face first, biting the pavement, drunken and dizzy. Who knew lonely vibration could make the cruel poverty of silence suddenly so sweet? Smoking a cigarette, that music smelled like the polished pickpocket potpourri of poetry. My, how the chips fell. I know you don't think much of me in those days, our days. Walking down Fifth Avenue after sunset, smoking cigarettes under those streetlights. Those days when I was 25. At 24, was it? And you, just a kid, hoping to find something better than your drunken daddy. Hands dirty from a desperate grind, making a dollhouse for his little girl. Forehead sweat beaten like a wine-soaked rag. The ragtime of the working man. The blue-collar blues. He toiled those train tracks for $2 in a $4 world. Yonkers. And you said you missed him. And I nodded. And we went to bed, dreaming of a better day, a better town, a better me, a better man. Scavenging the crevices of our bodies like wolves for blood, for prey, for another drag, for another egg, for a side of eggs, for a side of bacon. Crispy like your daddy used to make him. She was a whore, but she was my whore. Smoking cigarettes, listening to Brush Meat Drum. Wood Harnstein, Ed Wilds, Ricky and Frank, Clive, all the guys, smoking cigarettes, betting all their chips and coming up 2 pair. Do you know what a papaya tastes like? Nobody does. The taste eludes you like bumming a cigarette on Fifth Avenue. Stumbling under the masochist mezzanines of money-maddened mansions. Businesses brutally boarded up and long since closed. You look for another drag before the night takes you. Cruel, miserable sleep overthrows the senses. And you dream of him. Down, down, tumbling into the nightmare of real life. Smoking a cigarette and thinking about a night in 65. Or 64, was it? When you threw a dime at a whore and found what you were looking for a time. Until making love felt like asking for a loan. And the hard air of a smoky dive felt like home. And the heartless glow of the street lights on Fifth Avenue became time-tested, weather-beaten ritual. When the well-ordered people were sincerely sane, church-going believers eating pancakes in fluorescent temples, buck-toothed children slithering on the floors, writing on the walls. We were young, fresh-faced, youth-beaten and brave, smoking cigarettes in 1 to 5 diner. You told me to slap another nickel in the jukebox, slap on a worn-out record of our favorite tune, old smooth jazz by an old smooth legend. Willie Jackson, Freddie Fratty, Bippity Boo Pop Kazoo, Slammin' Jammin' Flip 'em Flap 'em, Pop It Twist It, Pull It Pass It. Dewey Armstrong, maybe. I can never remember a name. Time is a ruthless eraser. A man bets all his chips and gets 86th, and out he goes into the warm summer night under the street lights of Santa Monica Avenue, smoking a cigarette, night-hewn and dripping, stumble into some old dive where the watered-down whiskey still stings, tongues are loose, and nobody knows your name. And an old barfly from God knows where buys you a drink, lights a cigarette, and says, "It's all a toss of the coin, man. The two sides of the tracks. The madhouse and the White House." He was a poet, or so they say. The voice of a generation. Spent a lifetime waiting on a big break, never came. Me, I never been one for words. Words are for doctors, for lawyers, for politicians, for the uptown folk on Fifth Avenue, the Woody Bernsteins and Hal Edsons and Barney Barnins and Fred Flystons and Frankie Joneses in the smoky dives where they find peace from their weeping wives, where they pay $1 for a shot to forget the blackjack circus of civilization, the birthday weddings and Pepto-Bismol funerals, the bookies and milkmen, Sunday church and one Sunday best, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. They slapped the crucifix on a madhouse and called it the house of God. But in the heart of every man is a God that's greater than God, the flailing God of contradiction, the virgin saint of summer spent when we were so young our eyes were still the colors of our hearts. We smoked your daddy's cigarettes and drank your mama's crimson and your half-sister's uncle's old Malibu, the kind that smelled of American hope mixed with American desperation. And as long as you live, you remember it. The memory filed neatly beside the name of the girl you made love to in the summer of 65. Or 64 was it? Our bodies colliding together, sticky and you smudged like Spadina toboggans. The whole wide world whirling, spinning like a coin. Hollywood sets gleaming in the distance like dreams attainable. And that young man having that kind of love a man has when he's too young to be miserable, too miserable to be young, younger than he knows, smoking cigarettes. Stare into the night, thinking about a girl in Reno. And as my face dripped, I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears, but my face was wet. I hopped the nearest train and sped away through that nocturnal stupor. I watched the citizens of the world pass, the towers and trees of civilization blur and dissipate like crickets or fireflies, surrendering to the cruel distant night, the black on black, the jagged edges of the horizon, lost. I fled from darkness into a darker night, sitting on a train for God knows how long, a train with no beginning or end, no past, no present, except the noir. Hey, on me. I didn't know you. Didn't know me. We'll be better off. I was just a kid, lost and miserable, asking for a mother, asking for a cigarette, asking to be remembered in the haze of history, holding the heart and hand of hardly anyone, a human heart, an organ full of endings when endings were all there were. I light another cigarette and I say, thank you. You just keep crying, howling at the blood moon like a leper, full of love and doubt, hate and adoration. I never knew love could be so disappointing. I always thought love was disappointing. Money can't buy sadness, that's the truth, but it can buy the wind in your hair, a trick on a cold night, a cigarette, a shot, a hope, a dream, fast freedom, le rêve, l'espoir, la liberté. The kinds of things men look for in salty saloons, in the preacher's pulpit. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. But the shadow of death found me too soon. The shape of a man stirred me up and spat me out. Oh God, why hast thou forsaken me? 5:10 a.m. Smoking a cigarette. That's what we talked about on that park bench so long ago. The far-flung future we imagined we'd one day join, grown and gone. We talked about the places the world wore down, the smoky dives, the bus stops on Fifth Avenue, the spots where the earth seemed to stop abruptly. And burst open at the same time. We were the Dunkin' Donuts of destiny, the creme de la creme. We rise to the top.